as we get ready for the Eagles and Saints. John McMullen, Sports Illustrated, Birds 365, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, joins us now with a little preview, a little look, and some ins and outs on this team. We'll do a little buy or sell on the Fridays with John. What's going on, Johnny Mac?
Hey, Mike. How are you?
I'm good as always, pal. And yesterday you were on, and then afterwards the the injury report came out and started all new scuttlebutt. We had A.J. Brown, which we knew. What do we now know about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and his availability for Sunday?
Well, he wasn't at practice today, at least for the portion that was open to reporters, which is a very brief time on Fridays during a Sunday game week. So he wasn't there, but he was in the locker room and didn't want to talk to us. All he said was, ain't getting the story from me as coach. See you Sunday. So that, can mean he's playing. It can mean he's not playing. Basically,
Yeah.
CJ didn't want to talk about it. And that's his right, but wasn't at practice. At least it didn't look like he was at practice. Now, it's a veteran player, not terribly important for him to, it's not like they're going to rule him out if they think he can play. With AJ, I think it's pretty clear he's not going to play, and I think he'll be ruled out whenever they release the injury report. So CJ's the name to keep an eye on. Just a pure guess. They're probably going to list him as questionable and take it up to game day. But he second straight day wasn't at practice. Now, I was told it's not a serious long-term thing. So in the worst case scenario, he might miss this game and likely return. But still questionable, and he wouldn't confirm either way of what's going on with him for Sunday.
Do we know when this happened? Because he was not – I know Wednesday was an estimation, but he was not on the Wednesday report, and then all of a sudden Thursday. So do we know when this may have occurred?
Yeah, it happened in practice on Wednesday, and it is a walkthrough, but, guys get injured. Believe it or not, in the case of he tweaked something in his foot during that particular walkthrough, because it could have been something from the game. He did play in every rep during the game, but, as you come out of the game, the thought process, maybe, a little bit of soreness showed up. But Nick did confirm it did happen in practice on Wednesday. Bad luck. Sometimes those things happen, even in walkthroughs.
John McMullen, Birds 365 and Sports Illustrated. If Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does not play, John, give us the scenarios then, because it sounds like almost chaos.
Yeah, the question Vic Fangio would have to answer is does he want to use multiple moving parts? In theory, the third safety would be Avonte Maddox, but to move him to safety, you would have to start somebody else at nickel corner. He's been doing that for the first two games, and some would argue not effectively, so maybe it's not that big of a deal to move him back. But then you have to open up that question as, okay, what are you going to do there? Do you just start Cooper DeJean, who's now the backup slot? Vic confirmed that. Or do you start Quinyon Mitchell outside, move him inside when you need a slot, and play Isaiah Rodgers outside? So those are the avenues. You can even throw Tristan McCullum. He would be the next safety. Maybe they just throw that to the wind and say, all right, let's give Tristan a shot to play opposite Reed Blankenship. So a number of ways they can go. But yeah, some concern, obviously, if you don't have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, especially for an offense that has been as productive as the Saints. Although they're not really a volume passing team, at least early in the season. They're more of a play action shot team, Shanahan Kubiak offense. So they try to set up those shots downfield with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheen, the
Shaheed,
really
yeah.
fast receiver. Shaheed. So, he's averaging like 24 yards a catch. So he's obviously a deep threat guy, and he can run by anybody. And that's the concern. So you got to stop Alvin Kamara. That's number one. And he can beat you both ways. He's a great runner, but he's also a great receiver, so he beats you in multiple ways. And then they want to set up those play-action shots. If you look at last week, so they won the game in Dallas 44-19. Derek Carr threw it 16 times.
Yeah.
Now part of it is they were winning early, so they ran the ball a lot late, and they had a huge lead. So
and Dallas did get back into that. Dallas did get right around half. I mean, they scored. I mean, so it wasn't like it was over. But yeah, I watched most of that game, and you're right. Dallas could not stop the run. And I guess if you're watching what Philadelphia has done against the run, they run. New Orleans does a lot of the same concepts that Atlanta does.
Yeah, exact same concepts, really. A little bit different. They're not going to use as much pistol as Atlanta did, but Atlanta did that week one, and they kind of skewed it back against the Eagles because it didn't work with Kirk Cousins. So that's sort of, Sean McVay is a Shanahan guy as well, but he has sort of evolved it into his own version, and they use more pistol with Matthew Stafford, and the Falcons' offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, came from Sean McVay. So that's the connection there. But the Saints, it's Kyle Kubiak, who's the son of Gary Kubiak, who, is the direct sort of descendant of Mike Shanahan. So he is a traditional Mike Shanahan guy. You see it with the outside stretch runs. They do that a lot.
Yep.
And you see it with the pure play action, and they do that a lot, and they want to take those shots down the field.
Johnny Max with us here. All right, on these Fridays, we'll try to throw some buy and sell questions pertaining to the game for John. We'll start with this one. The Eagles are 28th in the NFL in defensive efficiency. They are 31st in yards per play allowed. They give up almost 7 yards every single play. And they are 30th in pressure percentage. They ranked last year they were 29th in defensive efficiency, 24th in yards per play, and 30th in pressure percentage. Buy or sell that this defense is worse than last year's?
I'm gonna sell. It's not worse than last year's because the one thing they can do is situational football. Again, it's a very small sample size, but as weird as those numbers say, they're tied for third in third down defense, and they're fifth in red zone defense. So they've been very good situationally, and I think if you look at Eagles defense last year, the biggest thing of all those bad numbers, the biggest thing of all was they couldn't get off the field on third down. They just could not get off the field. And this year, weirdly, with similar numbers, they've at least been able to get off the field quite a bit on third down.
And they've been good in the red zone for the most part.
Yeah, and they're fifth. Yeah, they're fifth in red zone. Now, of course, it didn't work against Kirk Cousins and Drake London late, but overall, and again, 2 weeks, fifth is pretty good, and third and third down defense is pretty good as well. So at least they're doing a few things well. So I'm going to sell on that one.
Are you surprised at those numbers? 28th in NFL defensive deficiency, 31st in yards per play. They give up 6.9 yards per play, and they're 30th in pressure percentage. Are you surprised when I give you those numbers?
Yeah. I'm not surprised because I know them, but yeah, if you would have told me before, I would have been surprised. I wouldn't. Yeah. It's been a perfect storm of everybody playing bad at once, and you don't expect that to happen. You had a little bit of a spike from Zach Ball in the opener, and Reed Blankenship played very well. Against Atlanta, it's crazy. They only gave up 15 points in the first 58 minutes of the game, but they didn't play well. They couldn't stop the run. I think Atlanta was more conservative because of what went on in week one, and they're not completely sold on if Kirk Cousins is healthy. So I think part of it was self-inflicted, not trying to push it when it came to passing the football. So part of it was that. I look at the individuals, and I said, well, boy, they gave up a lot of yardage against Green Bay, and they gave up a lot of points. But I still said certain guys played well. Can't really point to many guys playing well against Atlanta, and that's a concern, to say the least. And my biggest concern, I've said it pretty consistently, is Jalen Carter, and the reason why is because he's their best player, and he's got to play like their best player. And he's not playing well, and that I can't figure out because he's got too much talent not to play well. And I got to talk to Jalen after practice today, and he's very, accountable, which was good to see. He's not happy. He called his own play trash. That's the word he used, not me. So he's got a very high standard for himself. That's a good thing. He knows he's not playing up to what he's supposed to play. And hopefully light some fire under him and you see a different guy. Problem is this Saints offensive line is very good. This has been certainly one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, as you can imagine, over the first 2 weeks because of how much production they've had. But as Vic Fangio also pointed out, because, again, it's a Shanahan-Kubiak play action, on top of it, they do a lot of max protection. So this is not the week to expect big pressure numbers, sacks, because not only do they have good players up front, they're also on top of it, they max protect a lot and send out fewer receivers than most NFL teams. So it's going to be interesting.
All right, John. The Saints have scored on all 15 offensive drives that Derek Carr has played in this season. It's the longest streak by any quarterback at any point of a season going back to 1978. So can the Eagles force a punt on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm going to buy that. You can't keep up that pace, Mike. You can't keep it up.
Well, and it's a good conversational. It's a good conversational starting point. If this team has scored 91 points in 2 games, you figure there's got to be a little bit of a drop off where they just don't, click.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're playing the odds there. I mean, it can't continue. It literally can't continue. So, yeah, I think you're going to get to see a punt. Now,
yeah,
I think they're going to score. Yeah, I think they're going to score a bunch of points, but I do think they can't keep up that pace. And, Derek Carr's a good quarterback. I wouldn't call him a great quarterback. I think, as Vic also said, this is the perfect offense for him. I think this is the best offense he's been in that can take advantage of what he does well and kind of hide what he doesn't do well. So I think it's a perfect situation for him, and that's why he's playing at the level he's playing at. But, at the same time, I think he's got another streak of 2 touchdowns or more dating back to last season, plus 100 passer rating for, I think, 6 consecutive games. And only 4 guys have done it for 7 games. And that's Manning, Brady, Rodgers, and Mahomes.
Yeah.
And he doesn't belong in that conversation. So
no. No, he's a
Uh,
weird guy in terms of, he had that 1 year and he kind of got the money and then but he's kind of, you kind of think of him, I don't know, is he in like that Kirk Cousins kind of like, middle of the road?
yeah, he's a little bit younger. He's younger, he's healthier. But yeah, that's kind of the guy he is. Yeah, he's like a younger. He's accurate, not as accurate as Kirk, but if you give him time, he will hurt you. But he's also not capable of doing a lot of off schedule stuff that's going to hurt you or extending plays. So
They also have a bunch of guys.
operation.
They also, John, have a bunch of guys that are kind of like Olave was really good at Ohio State, but he wasn't getting the same amount of publicity in the draft. Shaheed's just a guy who can run, but he's not a well-known player in college. Kamara, I think to me, he's the difference. I mean, Kamara was an awesome player.
Yeah.
He was an awesome player on a bad team or mediocre teams, and then he got hurt. In the last 2 years, he has kind of not been a factor, but he seems to, a lot of times running backs, when they go away, they generally don't come back to the player they were. And he seemingly is back to that player.
Yeah, and he's never run for 1,000 yards, but he's always up in the 900. And then when he's healthy, he's up at 800 yards receiving. So he's kind of the guy that everybody thought Saquon Barkley is, or everybody thinks he is. He's one of those guys. Who can really do it both ways. But he's not a volume guy when it comes to the running part of it. But he's just difficult to deal with. And he's a playmaker. He scores a bunch of touchdowns. He always has. He's just a really good player. He's their best player.
John, a couple more. Here we go. Buy or sell. The defensive player we'll be talking about Monday's segment will be Jalen Carter. You said it. He called his play trash. He was benched because he was late, and he's played, well, trashy. So is he the guy that we'll be talking about when you're on Monday? Well, we'll figure out what time you're on Monday.
Boy, I don't think so.
No?
Because, as I said, they were a really good center, Eric McCoy. They were a really good guard. And on top of it, one of the things with Atlanta, I don't think people know how good Chris Lindstrom is. That's a 2-time second-team All-Pro. That's like a really good player who knows how to play. Now, still, I expect more out of Jalen Carter. You saw some flashes, but the consistency isn't there. So I think that's part of the problem, the consistency part of it. And, this is not the team where you're going to, because they're going to max protect. If they start struggling, they're just going to max protect, and they're going to shut it down. And that's sort of what the offense is about. And then it becomes, can you shut down a lesser receivers, not from a standpoint of productive. Olave is very good. They got one of the best deep threats in the NFL, arguably the best deep threat. So, but my point is, they're not like the Eagles with all their empty sets and sending out five receivers and things like that on certain plays. You're not going to see that nearly as much from the Saints. They would rather protect and say, all right, our guys are going to get open. Our quarterback's going to deliver the football, and they'll make that adjustment. So I don't think you're going to be seeing big sack numbers. And if you don't see big sack numbers, people are going to think you're playing like trash, whether you are or you aren't.
I'll leave you with this one. By the way, the Eagles, including the playoffs, have lost 8 of 12 versus the Saints over the last 20 years. It's the second worst record they've had against any team they've played. So they have not fared well against the Saints and have not fared well in New Orleans as well. So buy or sell, if the Eagles lose this game and next week and are 1-3 at the bye, that the conversation will be about Nick Sirianni's job.
Oh, yeah, I buy that. It already is. It already is. One of the things that amazed me, and I blame it more on Jeffrey Lurie than anybody else. I think it was easy to see this coming because of the setup that he approved of, and that's basically taking away the offensive power from the head coach. And even though Nick Sirianni did it proactively because he knew it was coming, he didn't want to give it up, no matter what he says. So from that standpoint, and then he create these little fiefdoms of Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. One drop pass revealed all the warts. One simple drop pass. And everybody's like, oh, well, who's in charge? Who's doing this? Who's making the fourth down decision? Does Nick believe in analytics? Does he not believe in analytics? Is he overriding Kellen Moore? Should he override Kellen? All this opens up on one drop pass. And the fact that Jeffrey Lurie didn't know that was coming, he's been around this town. He's from Boston, as your buddy Kevin Kincaid likes to point out. He's not a Philadelphian, but he's been here long enough that he should know better. And he should have foreseen this coming. And now you got the mess that it is.
Yeah, well, listen, you're right. They put that there, and I think that they were confident that they fixed everything else. So far, not so good, at least for 1 week. First week, you had some good vibes offensively, at least some defensive things, but we'll see. Tough Saints team Sunday at 1 right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, John, we will catch up with you on Monday.
All right, sounds good.